so.
Okay. I'd like to call the June 29, 2023 City Council Workshop for the City of Lake City to order. Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jernigan?
Here.
Mr. Hill?
Here.
Ms. Young?
Here.
Mr. Sampson?
Here.
Mayor Witt?
Here.
Mr. Dial?
Here.
Mr. Kennan?
Here.
Chief Butler?
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lake City Council has opened this public meeting. Since 1968, the city code has prohibited any person from making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becoming boisterous while addressing the city council. Yelling or making audible comments from the audience constitutes boisterous conduct. Such conduct will not be tolerated. There is only one approved manner of addressing the city council. That's to be recognized and speak from the podium. As a reminder, persons are not to openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon or firearm while the governing body is meeting. Okay. Let's see. There's public comments there. We have public comments listed at the end, but Mr. Warren said he had someplace to be, so I'm gonna let him speak at this time, and then we'll go on to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if you would, I would prefer you clarify as to why I'm speaking, because I don't want it to seem as if you're giving me special preference to
Now, he has
speak.
to go to a visitation for a memorial service.
Thank you. My son, uncle was murdered, so there's a visual, and I kindly asked the mayor outside to let me speak to the issues so I can be with my family and my son and be supportive. So I appreciate it, Mayor. Mayor, council, as we discuss item 1, City Hall and vacant lots, I just want to kind of go back, Mayor, and correct me if I'm wrong. There's an organization chart that kind of lists how things are in order, and at the top it has the citizens, so forth and so on, but the citizens at the top of that organization chart. Would I be correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So the citizens are the ones who should be most important. They're the ones who vote for the council members, and they're the ones who, in my opinion, should be listening to what their constituents would say, and versus getting in office and then, doing what they want to do per se. And the reason I say that is because we're discussing City Hall, and I've had almost perfect attendance as it relates to City Hall, and the mayor and different ones can attest to that. And we've been down this City Hall journey. The first time we went down this City Hall journey, we borrowed money. We got in bed with the county, and we're gonna build a joint City Hall. Correct me if I'm wrong at any point here. And we decided not to take that route. And instead of using that money after we decided not to do a City Hall building with the county, some members thought it would be a great idea to use the fund that was specifically used to be borrowed to build City Hall to build a new fire station out west of 90. When a fire station arrangement was pretty much offered to us out by the fairgrounds for free. All right, we can debate that issue, but I don't want to. I know it to be true and factual. But now we're back saying, let's look at City Hall. But then the old Columbia County Bank building came up for sale. And I remember being in this room with other people, and one of the first things that me and other people said, are we 100% sure that if we spend this $1 million on the Columbia County old bank, that it would be enough room to do everything that we need to do as a City Hall? And by God, the council at that time said yes. And we paid for it. And now we're back saying we don't have enough room. And I just say, like I say at the house, look, you got to put your ducks in a row. You got to prioritize. And if we didn't do a City Hall when we had the money to do it, then evidently we didn't think it was important enough. and we bought a city hall building that we thought was big enough, and we didn't do a site visit to find out whether or not it was big enough and have a workshop to make sure all parties can be held, shame on us. And the third thing I would say is that I looked at the backup material in the structural engineering analysis, along with some engineer friends of mine. As a matter of fact, Vanessa George, my girlfriend, all of her uncle are engineers. And so we looked at this study, and nothing in this study says that anything is wrong with this building as if it's gonna just like fall down. The most they keep talking about is the facial, it's talking about the bricks. No bricks have fallen yet. Worst case scenario, you don't like the bricks for some reason, take the bricks off and go with a modern day look, which is hardwood board or batten board. That's what I would do. That's what I would say as a developer and knowing a lot of GCs. That's just my opinion. And then I look at the backup material as it comes to city-owned property and vacant lots. Why are we looking at city-owned property and vacant lots? Man, we've never had this discussion. And let me say this, the only thing we've ever dealt with in the history of being at the city council meeting are surplus lots. Lots that either we're gonna sell or give away to a 501c3. Now the purpose of having all these lots on that we know we ain't gonna get rid of, we ain't gonna sell, I think it's just a waste of the public time and y'all time as well. And I skip on to number two. Number two is the structuring of the advisory committees. Here's what's disappointing, Mayor. These advisory committees, they're not kept up with. They end up in expiring. Council, nor does legal, and whomever else may be a part of that process, even if it's the clerk, don't do a good job of notifying the council and getting on the agenda that we need to do this. How long have we been without a CRA, C-board? Quite some time, man. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah.
And that's a very important board because it's people like me that own property in the historical district and people that own property in the hood. Because remember in 2011, correct me if I'm wrong, most of District 10 got amended in 2011 to be a part of the taxing district. So most every black person that lives in District 10 paid a certain amount of money into that CRA fund, right?
Right.
So my question is, why is that board not active? Why does that board have never reflected the makeup of that map? And a second thing is, and I talked to Ms. Sykes, and I don't know whether or not she's willing to tell the truth today or not. Sometimes she likes to lie on me for some reason.
Point of order, Mr.
But-
Daniel.
Yeah,
Point of order.
we don't get personal.
I ain't on personal. That's a fact.
Okay.
It's not personal. It's a fact. Ask the council members and ask the
Okay,
city manager.
let's move on.
And the woman who loves to take up for. But Mr. Mayor, my point is this. We have to do better. And if you have a CRAC committee, which Ms. Sykes told me when I asked her, and it's a public records request, is there anybody that sits on the CRAC committee who lives in the CRA that has been sitting over millions of dollars? You know what she told me? No. How is it possible that you all let a board exist where all the people that's contributing the money to it don't even sit on the board? And you find that to be okay. This board finds that to be okay. This is y'all city, it's y'all dog, it's y'all show. But I'm telling you, I find it very offensive because I live in District 10. A lot of money come out of District 10. I find it to be very disrespectful, and I find it to be one of the most egregious things when it comes to justice and equality for all. Mayor, I'm done. I'm gonna go be with my family and console them. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on both issues. Y'all have a great day.
Right. Okay, that's the only one I had signed up anyway, so we're given the items of discussion, City Hall and vacant lots, Mr. Dow.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason this is being revisited, because for the last several years, there's been discussion concerning City Hall and the structure of this building, and after the purchase of the bank building and moving some departments to that building, there's been discussion over the last couple of years that I know of about whether or not we're going to build a new city hall, if we're going to try to refurbish this or do something with the existing buildings that we have. And since we're gearing up on the budget season, I'm trying to get clarification as far as the council is concerned, how you all are wanting to proceed. Now, we have managed the last couple of years or so status quo with what we have. Everybody's getting familiar where customer service and growth management is. And we're functioning the way it sits now. And we have, on the bond money that we have, you know, a lot did go to the fire station on the west side of town. But I just want to try to get some clarification or direction tonight, if this is a direction the council is still wanting to proceed, or if this is just something that needs to be put on the back burner for a few years until we have adequate funding, or if we want to try the funding to go ahead and try to do something now. In the packet, you had the structural assessment that was done on this city hall back in 2018, where they did find some structural deficiencies. Now, after reviewing that, back in January of this year, about 4.5 years later, we had Tetra Tech come back in, do another assessment to see if there'd been any major changes. And generally what that tells you is whether or not in a few years if there's been any more degrading of the building. They didn't really detect any more serious deficiencies other than what they found 4.5 years ago. Which basically that tells me, without doing a full assessment, they didn't find anything visually that's told them that this building is actually getting any worse. Now, we know it's aging every year, it's not getting any better, but they didn't find anything that struck them as alarming on this new assessment. The only thing was the increase to be able to fix this building. The one thing I would want to point out, if the council does consider wanting to refurbish this building, the quote that they had, or not a quote, it was actually just a projection at that time, was around $2.8 billion to structurally secure this building. The problem with that is, once you do that, then you have to look at the remodeling of it. You've got the AC, you've got the wiring, you've got the ductwork, you've got flooring, you've got all that. And once you start adding that into the 2.7 billion, you're looking at quite a bit of money to put into a building that could stand for another 5, 10 years, 20 years. Nobody actually knows. But at that point, my recommendation, or after I've looked at all of this, I don't see it feasible to put that kind of money into this building. Now, it is going to need some more maintenance, and what was brought up, and it's been discussed by administration before, if we wanted to remove the facade from around the building to make it more secure so we can get that net off of it. Because everybody knows this as a net building. You know, if we can get that off, do some more maintenance on it. The buildings that we have outside, the bank building and the other buildings we own, would scatter pretty much all of the departments, worse than they are now. Like I said, everything seems to be working fine now. The citizens are getting used to where customer service is and who's in City Hall. So I'm just trying to find out the direction if we're looking to do some remodeling, we're looking to try to build something, or if we want to try to rearrange some of the buildings we already own and scatter the departments, basically worse than they are. Now, as far as how the lots tie into this, the reason I brought these in and the way you'll see them broke down, I listed pretty much all of the lots the city owns. Basically, that's for information purposes for you all. And I also included the vacant lots that may be possible to build on if that's the direction that the council wanted to go. But I also wanted to include the vacant lots and the lots that we own, because a lot of times you as council members get calls from constituents, or we have people come wanting to know if they can use one of the vacant parcels for different things. You know, we have a couple right now that want to use it for parking lot and things like that. This way it gives you a means to flip through, see where that parcel is, see what's on it, and see if it's a viable option that you want to allow a citizen to do something with it, if we need to sell it, for along those, that's why you have so many parcels in there. It's basically for information purposes, especially for the new members that aren't really that aware of how much property the city does own and have to maintain. And that's basically just mostly for information purposes, but also to show the vacant lots if you decide you want to build something. And that's basically where we're at with this meeting here as far as the city hall and the vacant lots.
Anybody got any comments?
Yes, on this net, Paul, could you show me after this workshop is over where the bricks are falling from? Because
Sure.
I've been looking and I haven't seen where any bricks have fell from this building.
Mr. Hill, I have never seen a brick fall from the building. I've heard of a brick that fell from the building, but I've never seen it.
And again, I think that was just a host or whatever for the city to spend money on a net that was unnecessary, to be unnecessary. So I would like to take a look for myself where these bricks are falling.
If I knew where they were falling from, I'd show you, but I have no idea. And even when the Tetra Tech, when they came and looked at it, they didn't see anywhere where they were actually coming loose to fall. Now, are they degraded? Yes, they are, because they're so old. But anytime you have a width concrete or brick that much, over time it's going to degrade. But I don't know of any area where I would be scared to walk under if it's fixed to fall off.
My best recollection is there was one or two that fell, or somebody said, like you said, I never knew where they came from. And that's about the time we were doing the study on it, and it was just, we wasn't sure, so just out of caution, they went ahead and put the nets up just until we could find out. And I don't think Tetra Tech said anything about anything being a danger now, so I don't know.
And one thing of noteworthy too, Mayor, on that as far as the danger, I don't know where the 40-mile-an-hour wind load came from that the city has been under for the last 2 years since they put the net up, or the study was done back in 2018. But the new assessment, and my talking to them, it was around 60+ miles an hour wind, which once you get to that point, you're talking, hurricane force or strong gale force anyway. But at that point, I don't know where the 40-mile-an-hour comes, or we're supposed to evacuate City Hall at that time. Does it need a lot of work? Yes, it does. But that goes into everything in here would have to be replaced, the windows and everything else to make it, energy efficient. That's one of the big things this building is not energy efficient. There's a lot of wasted space in it. So basically just comes down to the direction of how you all want to proceed as far as the cost and how you want to move forward.
But they say now 60 mile an hour.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Dowell, so what direction, I want to know the direction that you are recommending for us to go, simply because, you hear, you pretty much hear and see what goes on here at City Hall, and public safety and these staff members' safety is so important to me. So once you advise and let us know which way to go, that's the way I would love to go. But I wanna guarantee on the safety of every staff member in here and the people who come in for whatever reason. That's important to me. So whichever way you decide to go, I would definitely support that. But please, whatever you do, think of the safety of the staff members that we have here, okay? Thank you.
Any comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I know we were talking about the bricks. More importantly is the lateral strength of the walls. I think when you read that section 5.1 of the original report, that is where my concern would be. I don't know, and they talk about the steel lintels and the sagging bricks. That's a long time problem. It's like what Mr. Dial mentioned about the age. The mortar joints are old. They either need to be repaired or replaced. The brick ties are missing. There's pictures in there about that. I don't even know if they used brick ties at that time. I mean, but the big issue, if you look at those pictures in the back of that, on the original report, is there were walls that were exterior weight-bearing walls that are no longer there. So that's gonna affect the structure of the building. This sun roof here was not there. That was all closed initially when this building, back when it was on the historic register, they added that and removed this building from the historic register. But
Excuse me, did you say 5.1 or 2?
yeah, page 9, 5.1, that's the conclusion and recommendations.
Okay.
And then the other thing is the cost estimate. Now they narrowed it down to that 2 million, but I like how they hedged their bet from -30 to +50%. And to Mr. Dial's point too, it did not include the finishes. So if you are somewhere in there, -30 would be great. We know we're not gonna get that. But if you take that new number and you have even a 25% over that, and then you start doing these finishes inside, I don't know where that money comes from. Now, I think Mr. Dial's point about having people together makes sense. We got a lot of real estate over by the bank. If we had some kind of meeting room there that was attached to that building or right next to that building, would that be something that would work, Mr. Dial?
I think, and again, this is just my opinion, that I think this building would be sound for a while. But anything can form at any given time, that's why you can't do any given guarantee. But I think in my estimation, the best thing to do would be, you have that vacant lot west of the bank building there, where customer service is now. If you choose the route to build a smaller, go ahead and leave customer service, growth management, and you could probably put another department in that building. Then you could take and build a smaller city hall with a nice meeting area to the west of it. You can always close that street in between, build some kind of walkway in between them. Build it in such a way that, you'll be able to expand it in the years and stuff to come. A lot of construction does that now. They call it build out, when they just build it a certain way, then they leave one wall to where it can be extended later on if it's needed. I think a 1-story, I think would be the best. I think in this day and time with elevators and everything else, that having something right here on the main street where citizens can just walk straight in without having to go through the elevators and different things like that. But I think that would be an ideal spot, since you already have customer service right there. If they needed something from City Hall, they could go right over to customer service. I think for less the money that you would put and like I said, I would not recommend trying to do anything with this building. Eventually, I think Mr. Sampson brought it before to try to sell the building, put that money towards the new City Hall, and just take and build a smaller footprint that would suffice for the needs that we have right now. Because if something happened to this building, our biggest concern right now is, having a nice meeting area. And the only option we would have if something happens here would be to try to use the school board auditorium, which we've done before. And I think just to have a centralized area right there would be my suggestion. And as you'll see, I didn't include in this the parcels from the Lakeshore Hospital Authority. I did that because I still have yet to hear back from the Lakeshore Hospital Authority as to whether or not they want to allow us to keep and use some of the parcels without building anything over there. So I didn't want to include them in here with the idea that, we actually own them, because until we get a ruling from them or we actually do something, or they agree to let us do something with the property. That's why they're not in here if anybody had any questions on it.
Do you have a range of what a new building would cost, like 5 to 7, 4 to whatever?
Well, I mean, if we're going to keep, then that would be the thing, it would come down to whether or not you were going to continue to use the old bank building and, put a little bit of money in it. You could always sell, I guess I should say the Columbia County, where customer service is now.
Right.
Keep that building, maybe put a little bit of money in it to renovate it a little bit. Get rid of that other bank building. I don't see any use. It will cost a lot of money to retrofit that for anything. I know it was looked at one time for council chambers, but I think the cost that we would put into that would be well over what the use we would get out of it. But based on that, if you're just going to there's all kind of nice metal structures you can build now, you know, and just, the outside might not be the Taj Mahal looking, but you can do the insides up pretty good on those buildings. But until you get a actual, what departments are actually gonna be in there and add a few for expansion, depending on the size of the, council chambers or meeting room that you want to have, you know. But I guess to my point, that's what I'm trying to find out tonight, what direction, so we can actually start looking into it. I would rather not go into something saying, well, we got $10 million, let's build something. You know, I'd like to find out what we need first, and then ask them what they can build it for, before we tell people what we got to spend.
I like the idea of doing that, but I'd like to know we had the money to do it without burdening us. And if we're functional right now, my recommendation would be to function like we are, start looking for the money so that we can do, because whatever we do, I'd rather do it right than just throw something up just to say we did it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
so one thing I'd recommend is having Mr. Dial look into what would work the best there. I know there's other options even within the customer service building that could expand upstairs possibly. I mean, there's other options. If he would figure out and let us know what would work best for the city and the administration, then get together a price of what it would be. I think he's exactly right. I think the mistake when we borrowed the money before was we borrowed the money we could borrow and then said, what can we fit in that money? And it was never gonna work.
right.
The number was never gonna be that amount. So I think if we had some kind of plan and idea, then figure out, you know, what it would cost, because it's all speculation before that. And make sure, and I think to the future growth point of making the building where it's expandable, I think that makes sense.
It does, me too.
And I think I mean, you look at how they build hospitals now, you know, even the one here, you can just add a floor if you want. So to me, I think that would be what we should do, is go down a path of, you know, the administration getting together and saying, this is what we want it to look like, and then coming back and figuring out what the cost of that would be. And there could be several options. I think the metal building's a great idea. Those are very durable now, so, and they're a little less expensive. Right now, nothing is inexpensive, that's for sure, but I mean, I don't even know if I'd put money, we mentioned removing the facade. I'm concerned, looking at these pictures, that we remove that facade and find out some of that's holding the building together. I mean, you never know when you're dealing with a building this old. But if we can move on from this building in the right plan, I think that's one thing that Mr. Dial could look into.
I agree with that.
I agree with it. I agree with that too.
And I agree the staff knows more about their needs and how they work with different departments and placing them. And sometimes we might, I mean, I want our opinion in it, but they know day to day what's going on. Anything else on that?
So if I could, just clarify, Mayor, you would
Yes.
like me to, based on the comments made by council members, is, to look at some different options. One would be, an estimated cost plus or minus for a, building. And then, see what we can do as far as maybe expanding the customer service building upstairs, see if it's feasible to be able to do anything with that. Is that basically what?
I agree with that, and that we don't have to do it tomorrow. We need to be in motion to do it and keep moving forward, but it don't have to be tomorrow.
Because it'll take some time to put that together and get with staff and find out what can be done with that building over there and what, once we find out what can be put in there, that gives us a better idea of the building that we'll need to get built.
The next item is the,
Mr. Mayor, is it possible for public comment after hearing the?
after we get through, we got a place for public comments.
Okay, for the first one. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, I guess the city-owned property and vacant lots, does anybody have any questions of staff for that? Or he's explained kind of why he put it in here and that, and I appreciate the work y'all did in putting this packet together. It's very informative and you did a good job. But does anybody have any comments about the lots and that at this time? If not, then we can move to the advisory committees.
Mayor, on this one, the reason I wanted this to be brought back up is, we haven't, been using the advisory committees for some time. Once we, determined that we had some, potential sunshine violations on the makeup of some of the committees. And when looking at the different committees that we have, where by ordinance to have four, the airport committee, utility, beautification, and the CARC. My recommendation, and this is strictly just a recommendation based on my part, would be, I would like to see the committee type thing changed a little bit. Now, the airport committee, I can see keeping out, because the airport deals with HACO, it deals a lot with the college, it deals with the industrial park out there. So you got a lot of entities that get a lot of input on that side there. The utility, beautification, and CRC, I can see where the council as a whole could become the members of those committees. Now, the CRA is already the board. Say like the CRAC, you have that meeting, they come up with ideas and they take it to the CRA. Then the CRA, which is you all, then comes back to the council for voting. I'd like to see, just a suggestion, if it could be, the committees on those could be set up in a way where we have not a workshop, but like a meeting before certain council meetings, like at 5:30, where the public and staff would be present to give concerns, give suggestions, the same as they do now in the committee, but they would be giving it directly to the council. That eliminates the sunshine part of it, because the council is already governed by the sunshine law to not discuss things with each other. That way you would be getting all the information as a public entity at one time. It doesn't mean you have to act on anything on that. Now, it's the same way if you have a CRA meeting. You're not going to be at the council meeting that night to act on it most of the time. And you can come back in a couple of weeks if it's something that needs to be put on the agenda. But it still gives the public and staff members time to come before the meeting, give their input, and then we could have a meeting that could be put on the agenda later if there's something that needs to be acted on. But that's just my suggestion to kind of eliminate the sunshine issues that we have, and it still gives staff and the public time to come and offer suggestions and ideas. That's just a suggestion.
Well, I know with the CRAC, there was times that it would make recommendations, and then those recommendations didn't always get to the CRA, or they did, but they were a little different, and then by the time the city council, and there was some miscommunication through that process that would be cured by the five of us doing it. So I definitely think that's an issue that needs to be fixed as far as that is. The utility, most of the stuff we do is the five of us anyway, and sometimes with that committee, you'd have a couple of council people that went to the utility meeting, but the others didn't, and they wasn't up to speed with it. So I think all of us could probably act together. That's everything that is.
Mr. Mayor, I think all of the committees could be done that way. I don't think we need any separate ones. If we did it that way, maybe we could even do it, instead of coming earlier, maybe we could do it within the meeting as a separate set aside time, just without action. And that way, and I'm just thinking to make it ease of people on their schedule. I know sometimes we had the committees at all different times before, and it makes sense that we could bring that up, and then the people that are coming to present, they would know in advance and have everything set. But I think it would require a change to ordinance for sure, because I think aren't these committees set up?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would need to do something there, but to me, I think it makes sense just to have all of them that way.
Well, just like the utilities, if we have a huge utility decision, such as some expansion or something, just like we do with the new city hall, we could always just workshop it as a committee have staff, do it, or like you say, before a meeting or during.
I would say we need to get to having the regular updates, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So maybe we pick in like maybe this month's airport, the next month might be utility, and then unless something special comes up. To me, I think that's how you keep informed of what's going on, and you can get the right people there in front of us, so we can make a decision later on.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Dow, I think that's an excellent idea. And just like Councilman Todd said, if we can get all the committees to meet before, during, or after, it would be great. I think that's an excellent idea. Keep up the good work. I like that.
Yes.
On page 105 in your books, at the top of the ordinance, or on the page of that is the section of the ordinance, it's section 2-49. And Mr. Sampson is correct, we would definitely have to modify the ordinance if we are eliminating those 4 standing committees, which can be done easily by ordinance. But section 2-49 does create a committee of the whole council that could accomplish exactly what Mr. Dahl is talking about. And the council could meet in workshop, to discuss any matter. So that would work perfectly. It's already identified in the ordinance, so that would not have to be reconstructed for that. But we would be able to eliminate the other 4 committees, if that's the desire of the council.
Like that's where everybody's at. Anybody got any other ideas?
I like that.
Mr. Dyer, good with where we're at?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that completes the items we had. I do have one person left that wants to speak, well, maybe something. If anybody else wants to speak, real quick, if you'll fill out these forms, so we'll have them. And, Ms. Highland?
Good evening, council. My name is Elena Holland. I'm a resident of Columbia County for 52 years, born and raised. I live on 1823 Southwest Judy Glen. I've been there 27 years and 7 months. And we're constantly having a problem with the ditches. Mr. Paul and Mr. Don, they called me when I was concerned about the situation. But I just wanted to know, is there any way that you can come out, because my land holds the most water. And so the covers, are filled with dirt where the water can't flow, and my driveway is so low until the water just sit there. So we manually, my husband and I, go out and dig ditches for the water to flow inside of the ditch, but the water just sit there and stand. So if I can get some help with that, I would very much appreciate it. And I thank you for all that you do for our city. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Holland.
Okay, who else want to speak? If you, just bring it up here and then just give us your name and I'll fill it in. Okay? Mr. Mickelson.
Hi, my name's Jake Mickelson. I've met a couple of y'all already. I've met with Mr. Dial and Ms. Moore. I really just wanted to comment just about some of the discussion that you guys had earlier on the City Hall and the renovations that you guys were considering. I'm representing a company called Schneider Electric, and one of the things that we do and we look at is we partner with cities and we help find funding to address deferred maintenance and facility renovations and improvements. And so just an option to potentially explore is we could have our engineers come out on site and look at the current state of the facilities that you have and provide an estimate of how much money we could save the city for that. So that way you could get a more complete picture and a more complete idea of what some renovations could cost for the district, or for the city, I should say. And so that way you guys can make a more educated decision, because based on the discussion that I heard, it sounded like there's still some question marks in regards to funding and how much some of these renovations could potentially cost. And also, in addition, Mr. Dow, I believe you mentioned very briefly about how there are concerns about how the City Hall is currently operating from an efficiency standpoint, and how moving towards another facility could help improve that. That's another thing that we could explore, is seeing how the facilities are currently operating and seeing if there's an opportunity to save the district money from a utility standpoint on their energy spending, and to get a better picture in terms of how much we could save the city. And just for an example, we worked with Citrus County here in Florida, And this was back in 2010, and we were able to save that county $4 million over the course of 20 years in facility improvements and with their operational spending. So that's just something that we could do, is we could have our engineers come out on site and take a look for you guys, if that's something that you guys would be open to exploring a little bit further. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Garner?
Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor. Joshua Garner. Just a couple things on item 1. I just foresee City Hall always being a historic looking site. Hearing the terms metal buildings just reminds me about the hideousness of Family Dollar being here on Marion Street. So I'd love to kind of keep that in mind, especially when talking about the facade and you know, either removing it or keeping it and upgrading it. Regardless of that scenario, I feel like the $2 to possible $3 million to renovate this building outside of the inside portion, of course, will be far less than what it would take to build a whole new building. Don't get me wrong, it would be amazing to have a new building right there on the main road. I do feel like that would be great, especially if everything could be connected, like was mentioned with the road being closed off, and the potential for expansion. I just would hate to see another metal building, because you've got Badcock, you've got the Advertiser, All Things Visual, you've got the beauty supply shop, all right there, and they're all just metal buildings in a quote unquote historical district. And I know you have the ability to remove them from that, you know, stipulations, but again, just Lake City, and you know, when you think of Lake City, it's an old place. It's been here for a while. So just a boring metal building, even though the inside might look nice, it just kind of throws people off a little bit, I think. I have, not to mention the several lots that I did see in the report, excluding the Lakeshore Hospital Authority, which I'm extremely disappointed that they didn't get back to you in time, or where that gap was, because those are some major properties of land that could bring a lot of income to the city if they were sold for the appropriate items, or if they were used for the appropriate things like more retail, more restaurants, more gathering style areas that I personally and a lot of others have wanted to see. I've made it known a few times about working on, you know, some sort of nonprofit in terms of kind of uniting the North and South Marion Street, because there's always this crazy clash that seems to happen. You know, doing so, I've spoken about the tiny little spot in between the theater and the old bank, just to use as more like a community style park. So when there's food trucks and things like that, there could be park benches. When there's no market available, but it's Christmas time, you know, that could be used to help, you know, local vendors have that space there. Two just quick little last things. I know that it was spoken about the parking lot issue beside the theater. I don't know what has come of that yet. I've unfortunately had a lot of prior commitments and haven't been able to make it for the last couple months, but I still see the fence there. I would love to see including a part of a downtown sort of organization, possibly even doing like a drive-in movie theater in that spot for the citizens of the area. And in terms of the old bank building, one thing that you know, I would love to have, you know, would love to see, especially since its historic nature, if you continue to build this or the other building on the main street, I would love to see that turn into more of a tourism style center, with the ability of conference rooms and things like that. So when businesses come to Lake City and they want to have a grand opening party, but they don't have such space, that it could be potentially used for that. But more than likely just an office, a central office for all the tourism attractions that Columbia County has to offer its residents and its visitors. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
All right, any comments, council? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second. Second. All in favor? Good meeting.